I was going to comment myself here, Dan. Just, I think what we're hearing all around is this commonality of the love for the market, which is the state's longest continuously operating one, appreciation for one of the most vibrant downtowns around, and I think it's poised to become more so as we look at Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal Area coming online. So I think as we heard at the Moscow Arts Commission public input session, that it's not about winners and losers, or competing interests, that we have to have an outcome, that there's not any bad to this. It's better and perhaps best, or something like that. I think Nels Reese said that. So, looking at the comments we've received through all these different avenues, from the vendors, from the brick and mortar businesses in the downtown vicinity, from the public consumers, and trying to decide what's the best here. The direction for us on our agenda tonight is simply to receive the report and the additional comments, and to direct staff as council may deem appropriate. Wayne.
You had your hand up first.
He did. Dan, go ahead.
I did an informal poll as far as, asking people what they thought. I'll backstep a little bit. Isn't it great that where we live, this is the most contentious topic, is where the farmers market's going to be? I mean, that's why I like living in Moscow, because that's all anybody's worried about right now. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, I've received one negative comment from a vendor, and I've received one negative comment from a downtown business, but I've had several positives throughout the last, and I'm hesitant to make the move, just make the jump and say, let's do it. But one of the downtown vendors that I frequent, he says, I'd like you to close Main Street at least once or twice a week because of the type of traffic it creates down there, and it's just the festive atmosphere that it creates. If we could have an art walk every week, that'd be great, he said. And I don't know if the Arts Commission's prepared to do anything like that yet, but
only if you want to head it up.
Anyhow, I'm reluctant to make the big jump. I know that some of my fellow council members are ready to just go in guns a-blazing, but and it's, even my wife said that she'd prefer it on Main Street, and she didn't even go. So I'll leave it at that.
Wayne?
Being a linear thinker, I'm going to be a little global on this one, which may surprise folks, and I'm going to be a little philosophical. Why do we do the farmers market? We talk about, well, more sales for the vendors, more sales for the vendors. By testimony from Kathleen, over probably 60% of the sales leaves the city and leaves the county. Only 10% of the sales stay in Moscow. So we're doing it for the sales, but we're doing it in a roundabout way. And that's this. The farmers market is part of the character of the city of Moscow. It's part of the arts. It's something that a large part of our population thoroughly enjoys. At the same time, we have to give the vendors the sales to get the vendors to come. And if the vendors can make money, there's going to be more of them going to come, and it's going to create more of an atmosphere, and it's going to create more community. It's interesting, though, that we talk about $53,000 worth of sales. That's money that's not being spent at brick and mortar businesses in the city of Moscow that pay taxes and keep the money within Moscow. But you know what? They don't complain about it. I've never heard any of them saying, those vendors at the farmers market are taking money out of my pocket. I've never heard that. Because the other offshoot is the exposure. The exposure to the brick and mortar businesses. Out of the 4 Saturdays, I went down to farmers market, the first one and the last one. The last one I spent probably an hour and a half visiting mostly with the brick and mortar businesses to get their opinion as to what it was doing for them. The vast majority of them almost every single one of them had a very positive attitude, because even if their sales weren't going up, they knew that they were getting more exposure. And if you've ever been in business, you know that there's two types of things that are extremely hard to identify as to the effectiveness. Number one is advertising, and number two is what type of exposure are you getting. So from that standpoint, it's obvious to me from our reports that we got from the questionnaires that it's much more popular on Main Street than it is in the Jackson Street parking lot. Dan, you said your wife didn't go? My wife has been every single weekend that it was down on Main Street, and she will not go when it's on Jackson Street because she says it's too congested and she doesn't enjoy it. And, yep, she bought stuff, too. So that was the other good side of it. So there's been a discussion, should we wait until after we have your study done and see what the final positioning should be, or, you know, what's the long-range marketing plan for the farmers market? Or let's wait, and then when the kids get back, we can put it out there for another month and see what happens when the university's here. So, yeah, Dan, I'm one of those council members that's going to say, let's just put it back on Main Street. That's where the vast majority of people are enjoying it. It's a work in motion. You're kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit, and you'll get the job done. Now, Kathleen, there's one thing that has to get done if it gets on Main Street, and that is that street has got to be opened up sooner. It has to be opened up on time.
Mm-hmm. After the market, you mean? After the market.
Yeah, after the market.
Yep.
When it's done, they're gone, and we've talked about that. So that's more than 2 bits worth. I guess that was about $1 worth, wasn't it?
Okay, Sue?
Well, we always talk about consistency in P&Z and stuff and having people know what to expect. And I think for the vendors, we told them what we were going to do this year. And a lot of them that I talked to weren't real wowed about things being changed on them. Gerardo from Patty's Kitchen made a very interesting point. He asked us not to make a decision tonight because he said his business was moved 4 times in 4 weeks, and he said his sales had been down, but he didn't know if it was because of the weather or it was because he was in 4 different places in 4 different weeks and people couldn't find him, and he didn't know how to make that decision. And so he was hoping that we didn't make that decision right away. If it were to go to Main Street now, I would say it should close at noon and be gone by 1. Because extending it to 1 and then gone by 2 makes 2:30, makes 3. Brick and mortar businesses pay higher property taxes, high utilities, higher water, sewer, and garbage than residences in town. And we have to keep them healthy. Do we want to see Main Street change more over to a service industry where you have insurance agencies, law offices, and things that are closed on Saturdays, or do we want to keep our retailers? I know, so I'm reticent to do an immediate change. I mean, if you're going to jump in and make the change now, then why bother to have a strategic plan? Because we've already made the decision. I have concerns with if it were going to be moved to Main Street now and it were extended to 6th, that there be clearly marked openings between, and I don't mean just a little space where somebody puts a chair. I mean with little flags and chalk on the ground and for entrances for every retailer that is downtown, because I think they do get buried. And salesmen, I had trouble finding my favorites, but that's okay. I wandered around, and I think the one thing that I was definitely against moving it until next year at all, till I heard what Mr. Wilson had to say about safety of vendors unloading, and I think that's something that's very important. But I'm kind of a wait and see on this because I can see next year we're definitely going to be moving it for several weeks, and no matter where we have it, if we have it on Main Street, we're going to have to move it homecoming weekend anyway. And I think that the moving it on Main Street, some of that has been, some of the negative may have been that the Jackson Street lot wasn't available because it wasn't, you couldn't park in it because of the lights being fixed. So there's too many variables right now that we don't know exactly what's causing the negatives. Yes, all the customers love it, but the customers need to be going into the businesses too. And so that's why I'd like to hear what the Chamber of Commerce has to say before we make a final decision.
Yeah. Tim, we haven't heard much from you.
Well, actually, Walter's had his hand up before I did.
Okay. Walter?
I talked to Gerardo at Patty's Kitchen as well. He said, if I remember correctly, he effectively said, Main Street is great, just settle me down, put me in a spot so that I know that's where I am, and I'll be happy, so is my paraphrasing of what he said. I'm addressing Sue's comments. Why have a strategic plan if you're going to move it now? How much are we paying for this plan?
We're going to have $5,000 in kind, and
Yeah.
it's a $15,000 grant award.
And is the purpose of this to ask where should the market be?
Oh, that's not the only questions. I mean, we don't have a long-term plan of any sort for this market, and the market being 35 years old kind of needs to have a roadmap of where it's going, and it currently does not. Even Boise is looking to do a strategic plan and did a study about a year-round market, if they have the customer base to do a year-round market. We have a winter market, we have a 6-month summer market, we have a Tuesday growers market with the co-op. I think there's some planning that could be done.
I don't, if I may,
Please.
I don't know. Can anybody name me something that we've done up here that's got 87% citizen support? I mean, I've said since long before I was on a city council that any time a city council can get people 50-50, they're doing really good. You vote for Rose Week and the Petunia people get mad at you. I mean, you know, but we've got in the comment cards 87% positive, 5% negative, and 32 that just want to talk about other stuff, apparently. The bars on the graphs, overwhelmingly Main Street. I don't know why we would wait for the strategic plan to either tell us Main Street, Jackson Street, or back in the City Hall parking lot when the citizens so overwhelmingly love, and that's the word they use, some of them multiple times in the same sentence, Main Street. I've spent hours at the market while this is going on. I'm not really a market person. I don't buy produce. I don't go down to visit people. But I went down during this because it was such a big question coming before the city council. Kathleen roped me in for 4 hours handing out survey cards. She says, make yourself useful. I said, okay.
Yes, I did.
No complaint. I popped in quickly last Saturday because we were leaving town. My wife wanted some particular stuff to take with us, and I couldn't walk through the market without a half dozen people saying, when are y'all going to make a decision to put this thing on Main Street where it belongs? I'm not sure what waiting does. I agree with the gentleman's comments about students. I can't see them buying produce to take to an apartment or a dorm room. I don't know when we've done anything that's been, and I didn't go into this. I've told people this. We moved the market to get it out of the way of construction. It never crossed my mind that this would happen. It was just happened. And that's why I started paying attention to it. I'm going to make a motion that we move this to Main Street.
Please.
Second.
Effective as soon as management can do it. That we do have the strategic plan take place. And have them do the long range, do all the other things, and if they want to find some way to say you ought to move it back to Jackson Street, then by golly, let them. But I don't think they will.
Okay, Wayne, you want to second that?
I
again?
did.
There you go. We have Walter's motion, we have Wayne's second. Further discussion?
Yes.
Wayne?
Tim. Tim wants to talk.
Kathleen, can we delineate the entrances to the brick and mortar businesses?
I think we can. I think we haven't looked at all options for
Okay.
placing vendors, and so there is some work to be done on placement and layout, and looking at a variety of options.
If the market were on Main Street, what would be the potential for increasing the number of vendors? Since I think we're at max at Jackson.
Well, let me make this really clear. The Jackson Street lot is not sustainable for the growth of the market. It doesn't. I'm recruiting vendors right now. We just got a new grain vendor from Lewiston, who we gave him premium season space, and he just came on 3 weeks ago. Now I'm in dialogue with a chicken vendor, meat vendor from Roseville, Washington, working with the health department. They're going to need power, and they're going to get a season space, and they're going to be a premium vendor because we have no chicken meat in the market. I'm working with a lamb vendor from up near Sandpoint, the only lamb meat I know of. I've spoken with Vandal Meat at the University of Idaho to bring in Vandal Meat. So once we start bringing in more produce and more specialty foods, which is what markets do, we need more space. And what that will do, currently we have about 10 flexible walk-on spaces in the Jackson Street parking lot. On Main Street, to the report, we had 35.
Thank
So
you.
right away, it opens up more space.
And a follow-up. So those three vendors that you just spoke of are coming because
I'm
there's-
recruiting them.
Not because there's potential on Main Street or Jackson. It's
No,
just
what they'll do.
doesn't have anything to do with
Nope.
the shift.
No, if you look at standards for farmers markets, you always look at inventory. And I posted on a food hub out of Portland. We have no pickles. We have no sauerkraut. We have no lamb. We have no chicken. We have no beef. In the past, we've had organic beef from Eaton Beef out down in Wawawa Canyon. We've had meat birds from out near Troy, from Tourmaline Farms. Those two vendors are no longer in the market. They went out of business, or they really chose a different lifestyle. We had duck eggs coming from Dodge Junction, if anybody knows where that is. And then they got discovered by the Seattle Pikes Place Market. So we lost that vendor. We lost the quail egg vendor to Rosars, and they're only on the Pullman Highway. Okay? So you're constantly replenishing your inventory in a market, and you look at best practices, and people want meat, they want eggs, and we don't have a grain vendor currently. I did talk to U of I about that. So the market is constantly replenishing inventory. So we're always looking for more space.
Thank you.
So pursuant to Sue's comment and then Tim's about visibility of the brick and mortar businesses, those were the complaints I
Yep.
heard as well. Some of those folks felt they'd lost the visibility, and I recall when we initially looked at this, the interest was in establishing the vendor booths back-to-back down the center of Main Street. That wasn't possible because of emergency access by fire trucks and police cars and such during the market. And so I do think it's really important that we try to preserve the well-being of our brick-and-mortar businesses who also are needing to make a living down there. So, I think however terrific however well-received it may be from one group of folks, if we injure others, then it's not to Moscow's greatest advantage for our vibrancy of our downtown. Let's see, Wayne had his hand up next.